We'll pick up right where we left off. On Tuesday, Lori remarked suddenly, "Our teacher had a friend come to see her in school today." "Charles's mother?" my husband and I asked simultaneously. "Nah," Lori said scornfully. "It was a man who came and made us do exercises. We had to touch our toes. Look!" He climbed down from his chair and squatted down and touched his toes. "Like this," he said. He got solemnly back into his chair and said, picking up his fork, "Charles didn't even do exercises." "That's fine," I said heartily. "Didn't Charles want to do the exercises?" "Nah," Lori said. "Charles was so fresh to the teacher's friend, he wasn't let to do exercises." "Fresh again," I said. "He kicked the teacher's friend," Lori said. "The teacher's friend told Charles to touch his toes like I just did, and Charles kicked him." "What are they going to do about Charles, do you suppose?" Lori's father asked him. Lori shrugged elaborately. "Throw him out of school, I guess," he said. Wednesday and Thursday were routine. Charles yelled during story hour and hit a boy in the stomach and made him cry. On Friday, Charles stayed after school again, and so did all the other children. With the third week of kindergarten, Charles was an institution in our family. The baby was being a Charles when he filled his wagon full of mud and pulled it through the kitchen. Even my husband when he caught his elbow in the telephone cord and pulled the telephone, ashtray, and a bowl of flowers off the table said, after the first minute, "Looks like Charles." During the third and fourth weeks, it looked like a reformation in Charles. Lori reported grimly at lunch that Thursday of the third week, Charles was so good today the teacher gave him an apple. "What?" I said, and my husband asked warily, "You mean Charles?" "Charles," Lori said. "He gave the crayons around and he picked up the books afterward, and the teacher said he was her helper." "What happened?" I asked incredulously. "He was her helper, that's all," Lori said and shrugged. "Can this be true about Charles?" I asked my husband that night. "Can something like this happen?" "Wait and see," my husband said cynically. "When you've got a Charles to deal with, this may mean he's only plotting." He seemed to be wrong. For over a week, Charles was the teacher's helper. Each day he handed things out and he picked things up. No one had to stay after school. "The PTA meeting's next week again," I told my husband one evening. "I'm going to find Charles's mother there." "Ask her what happened to Charles," my husband said. "I'd like to know." "I'd like to know myself," I said. On Friday of that week, things were back to normal. "You know what Charles did today?" Lori demanded at the lunch table in a voice slightly odd. "He told a little girl to say a word, and she said it, and the teacher washed her mouth out with soap, and Charles laughed." "What word?" his father asked unwisely. And Lori said, "I'll have to whisper it to you. It's so bad." He got down off his chair and went around to his father. His father bent his head down, and Lori whispered joyfully. His father's eyes widened. "Did Charles tell the little girl to say that?" he asked respectfully. "She said it twice," Lori said. "Charles told her to say it twice." "What happened to Charles?" my husband asked. "Nothing," Lori said. "He was passing out the crayons." Monday morning, Charles abandoned the little girl and said the evil word himself 3 or 4 times, getting his mouth washed out with soap each time. He also threw chalk. My husband came to the door with me that evening as I set out for the PTA meeting. "Invite her over for a cup of tea after the meeting," he said. "I want to get a look at her." "If only she's there," I said prayerfully. "She'll be there," my husband said. "I don't see how they could hold a PTA meeting without Charles's mother." At the meeting, I sat restlessly, scanning each comfortable matronly face, trying to determine which one hid the secret of Charles. None of them looked to me haggard enough. No one stood up in the meeting and apologized for the way her son had been acting. No one mentioned Charles. After the meeting, I identified and sought out Lori's kindergarten teacher. She had a plate with a cup of tea and a piece of chocolate cake. I had a plate with a cup of tea and a piece of marshmallow cake. We maneuvered up to one another cautiously and smiled. "I've been anxious to meet you," I said. "I'm Lori's mother." "We're all so interested in Lori," she said. "Well, he certainly likes kindergarten," I said. "He talks about it all the time." "We had a little trouble adjusting the first week or so," she said primly, "but now he's a fine little helper, with occasional lapses, of course." "Lori usually adjusts very quickly," I said. "I suppose this time it's Charles's influence." "Charles?" "Yes," I said, laughing. "You must have your hands full with that kindergarten with Charles." "Charles?" she said. "We don't have any Charles in this kindergarten."